Arya tapped her glass against his. Definitely not mine. The waiter had barely cleared our plates when she leaned forward, her fingers brushing his wrist. Still not mine, and whispered something that made him chuckle. I couldn't make out what she said, but I saw everything I needed to see. His smug grin, her knowing look, the shared quiet that excluded me like I was an uninvited guest at a private party. And then she said it loud enough for the whole veranda to hear. He either does exactly as I tell him, or he can take his pathetic backpack and weep at his mother's place. Giggles. Giggles from his buddies. Giggles from her buddies. Giggles from the two girls at the neighboring table who didn't even know our names. I sat there staring at the drops dripping down my untouched glass of iced tea, wondering exactly when I became the punchline. 3 hours earlier, I was under the impression we were going on a simple double date. She mentioned we were meeting a coworker and his significant other. I put on that stiff-collared shirt she always said made me look presentable, and even tamed my hair with water like a kid on picture day. I should have been more perceptive. The guy wasn't just a coworker. He was the reason she started applying fragrance before meetings, the reason she switched from green tea to espresso, the reason she'd been abstaining from social media, a phrase she used while shielding her phone screen whenever I walked by. And as it turned out, his partner was a no-show. How convenient. The whole dinner felt like a disastrous play where I was the understudy for a role that didn't exist. She talked over me. He laughed way too enthusiastically. Her foot never met mine under the table because it was probably somewhere under his. But it wasn't until the toast that the final act began. She stood up. She raised her glass and announced it was to doing what feels right, even when it surprises others. I didn't raise mine. They tapped glasses. Then they kissed. Not lightly on the cheek, not jokingly, not with hesitation. I stood up so quickly I knocked over my chair. No one even noticed. She looked at me like I had just passed gas in a cathedral. And I swear, she actually rolled her eyes. That was the moment. That was when I realized she didn't care if I stayed or left. She was already mentally gone. And yet I followed her home that night like a puppy that hadn't learned its lesson yet. But what I discovered in our bedroom, that's where this story truly begins. The drive home was silent, her in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, me holding the steering wheel so tight I was afraid my knuckles might crack. She didn't say a word, not a sorry, not an explanation, not even a ridiculous excuse, like it was just a joke. She didn't care enough to bother with a lie. She just sat there like nothing had happened, like it was perfectly normal to kiss another man in front of your husband during dinner and then ask if the garage door was working. When we pulled into the driveway, she got out first, keys all ready in hand. She didn't wait for me. The porch light was off, the house dark. The air smelled like the herb garden she never tended. Half-dead rosemary, a fitting analogy for the life I was unknowingly living. I stood outside the door for a full minute before going in, hoping that maybe she'd gone to bed, that I wouldn't have to confront her just yet. But she was in the kitchen, humming. She had poured herself a glass of red wine. Her heels were off, her hair was tied back. She looked relieved, like she'd finally gotten rid of some significant load she'd been carrying. That load was my. She didn't look at me when she spoke. Are you going to keep sulking, or do you want to converse like grown-ups? I don't remember what I said. Probably something weak. I think I asked her why. Maybe I asked if it even mattered. Maybe I tried to brush it off with humor. I'm not proud of that, but I do remember her response. Don't be so theatrical, Hudson. You knew things were off. You just didn't want to recognize it. She walked away, wine glass in hand, humming again, and I just stood there anchored by shock, deception, and a desperate wish that this was all a terrifying nightmare with unbelievably vibrant colors. Later that night, after I heard the master bedroom door shut and her light snoring drift through the hallway, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I went to the closet. Not mine, hers. I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe texts, maybe bills, maybe nothing at all. But what I found was worse than any of that. Hidden beneath her yoga bag was a shoebox. Inside were photographs, numerous, some printed, some instant snapshots. None of me. There she was, smiling in places I'd never been to, lounging in hotel suites, wrapped in bathrobes, wearing that black silk lingerie I thought she'd thrown out last year. And always with him, that same man from dinner, arms around her waist, kissing her temple, wearing matching necklaces. And then I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A bangle on her wrist, not just in one picture, in all of them. A thin gold chain with a letter charm, his initial. I ran to our bedroom, flicked on the light, and there it was, still on her wrist. She didn't even try to hide it. I stared at her while she slept, wondering if it had ever been me she wanted, or if I was just the backup plan she kept around until something better came along. Something more exciting, stronger, more confident. I wanted to wake her up, yell, demand answers. But instead I sat on the carpet, photos scattered around me like fragments of glass, and wept until my chest hurt. At 4:17 a.m., I picked up my phone and created a new note. Not to confront her, not a justification. I started compiling a list of every event that now made sense. The late-night work sessions, the corporate getaways, the abrupt desire to remodel our home, the way she started calling me Hud instead of Honey, the way she hadn't gotten intimate with me in half a year. Every entry felt like a stab, but the last thing I wrote was this. She didn't wound me tonight. I was already wounded. She just pointed it out loud enough for everyone to laugh. And I knew then I couldn't stay. But leaving wouldn't be the hardest part. What came next would unravel everything I thought I knew about her and about myself. Morning didn't arrive the way it used to. I used to wake up to the smell of coffee brewing, her messy bun bobbing as she moved around the kitchen, her sarcasm softening into something warm when she handed me a cup. That morning, I woke up on the floor. My back was aching, my legs were freezing, and my eyes were still puffy from weeping all night. She was gone. Not just from the bedroom. Gone. No letter, no explanation, no mention of where she might be or when she'd be back. The bed was made, her side at least. Mine looked like it had been slept in by a ghost. I stood slowly, knees cracking, and walked back to the closet. The shoebox was still there, though the lid was slightly ajar now, like it had been disturbed. I checked the pictures. 3 were missing. The ones I remembered most vividly, the ones with the hotel logo in the background. I didn't want to admit what that meant, but deep down I knew she had returned in the night, saw me snooping, and grabbed them. She didn't wake me. She didn't confront me. She just grabbed the evidence and left like a criminal making a getaway. I should have left then. I should have packed what little dignity I had and walked out the front door. But instead, I made breakfast. 2 eggs, the way I always did, completely out of habit. And when I put one plate down at her usual spot and sat across from it, I realized what I'd done. I had made breakfast for a ghost, for someone who had already moved on in every way except legally. I didn't eat. I sat there listening to the clicking of the kitchen clock, hearing the moments pass like footsteps echoing down a hallway. And then my phone buzzed. Block number, no text, just a voice note. Thought you should hear what she's saying about you when you're not around. Attached was a voice recording. I hesitated. My fingers trembled. And then I pressed play. It was her laughing, the clinking of glasses in the background, and then her voice, clear and cruel. Hudson, he still thinks I adore him. Pathetic guy. He's just there like a piece of background decor. He does the chores and thinks that counts as intimacy. Another voice, his. Felix, the man from the restaurant. Are you going to tell him? What's the point? He'll weep, plead, and maybe write me another letter about his emotions. I don't need that energy. She giggled again. And he said, Then why not end it? Silence. Then her voice, sharp because I haven't finished redecorating what's mine. I dropped the phone. I didn't even know what that meant. Redecorating what's hers. Was she talking about the house, the accounts, my name on the title, my retirement savings? That was when it dawned on me. The last time we discussed finances, she was unusually affectionate, offered to assist with taxes this year, asked for access to my work account. I said yes because I was a fool, because I was her fool. Panic surged through me like ice water. I ran to my office, threw open the file drawer, and everything was exactly where I left it. Neat, untouched, too untouched. Because one file was missing, the joint savings account statement. I checked my laptop. Password. Didn't work. I tried again. Locked out. That was when I realized I wasn't living with a wife anymore. I was living with a strategist, someone who had been plotting her escape, not out of anger, not out of betrayal, but with precision, with calculation. The knock at the door almost made me drop the laptop. I opened it expecting a neighbor, a delivery, anything normal. Instead, it was Elias, my friend, one of the guys who had been at the dinner. He looked shaken. "I need to talk to you," he said softly. "Not here, somewhere private." And that was the moment everything changed, because what he told me next wasn't about her infidelity. It was about mine. We didn't go to a cafe. We didn't sit on a park bench. Elias drove me to a gas station, parked by the garbage dumpsters, and turned off the engine. I didn't ask any questions. The silence between us was sharp enough to slice through whatever illusion of normality I had left. He rubbed his hands together anxiously, looking through the windshield like something outside was going to make this simpler. "I wasn't going to say anything," he began, "but what she did last night in front of everyone, that wasn't just a slip-up. That was intentional." I nodded, blankly. "Yeah, I kind of figured that out." "No," he said, turning to me finally. "You don't get it. That wasn't the first time. It's been going on for months, but last night she wanted you to see. She was putting on a show." I didn't speak. My throat was tight again, the same raw pressure that had been there since I found the photographs. Elias looked around, lowered his voice. "You remember New Year's Eve?" Of course I did. She had a work emergency, said they had to finish an end-of-year report, and she'd be back by midnight. She returned at 2:00 a.m., said they ran late. I believed her because believing was easier than fighting. She wasn't at work. Elias said, "I know, because I was at a buddy's place across town, and I saw her with him. Same guy from the restaurant, same smug grin. They weren't hiding. They were sitting in the corner of this quiet little bar, like they owned the world." He paused. I still didn't say anything. I wanted to vanish into the leather of the passenger seat. I thought, maybe it wasn't my business. He continued, "But after what I witnessed, I can't pretend anymore. I can't unsee what I saw." And he pulled out his phone and showed me something that made my heart feel like it had been torn. A video. It was grainy, filmed from a distance, but clear enough. Her at the bar, same black lace top from the pictures, his hand on her thigh, her head thrown back in laughter. At one point, he leaned in and whispered something, and she covered her mouth like a teenager being told a secret. I stared at it like it was fiction, like maybe this was someone else, some stranger who just looked like her. "She's not who you think she is, man," Elias said quietly. "She's not just having an affair. She's building a new life while keeping you on standby in case it doesn't work out." I was shaking. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was worse than that. It was the slow, dreadful recognition that I had been deliberately edited out of my own existence. "Why are you telling me now?" I finally asked, my voice hollow. Elias hesitated because I think someone else has been watching too. I blinked. "What?" He pulled up a second file, an email, no name, no subject, just an attachment. A photo taken through a window of me sitting on my porch, alone, and in the background, barely visible, was her and the man inside laughing behind me. "I didn't take this," Elias said, "but someone sent it to me 2 nights ago from an encrypted address." My head was spinning. "You think she's being watched by who?" He shook his head. I don't know. But whoever it is, they wanted me to show you. There was something bigger going on, something I don't understand. And the more I considered it, the more one thought crawled to the front of my mind. This isn't just infidelity. It's manipulation. It's a game. And I was the unsuspecting player. We sat in silence again. Elias looked drained. I felt like I was unraveling one thread at a time, and there was no end to the knot. When I got home, she was there smiling. "You okay?" she asked. "You look pale." I nodded, said nothing. And that night, while she slept, I unlocked the old phone I'd hidden in the garage 2 years ago, the one she forgot existed. I typed a single text and sent it to the anonymous email from the photo. "Who are you? Why are you watching us?" Her reply came 5 minutes later. "Finally, you're ready." I stared at the text for a long time. "Finally, you're ready." There was no name, no signature, just those 4 words sitting in my inbox like a fuse waiting for a spark. My heart raced in my throat. Every instinct told me to delete it and pretend none of this was real. But pretending was exactly what got me into this mess. Pretending she still cared. Pretending her distance was temporary. Pretending I wasn't being replaced one calculated move at a time. I wrote back, hand shaking. "Ready for what?" This time, the reply came with a file. A folder of images, 10 of them, all time-stamped, all taken from inside our house, not from outside, not through a window. Initially, the angles weren't obvious, low, discreet corner shots. But then I recognized the dresser in the guest room, the kitchen island, even the entryway bench I had assembled last winter. Each photo was clear, deliberate, and they weren't old. The latest image was from that morning. There I was, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at the shoebox of photographs, my face pale, eyes hollow, and just behind me, barely visible in the corner of the frame, was the red indicator light of a lens. I jumped up and scanned the room like I had just woken up from a nightmare. The vents, the smoke detector, the potted plant in the corner. I found it behind the mirror, buried into the molding so perfectly it looked like part of the frame. A pinhole, barely noticeable, but very real. I yanked it out and nearly crushed it in my hand. And then I realized something worse. I didn't install it, which meant someone else had access to my house, to our space, to my breakdowns and her deception. I texted Elias, "Did you plan anything? Anything inside the house?" He responded instantly, "What? No. What?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. I was too occupied with checking every room, every light fixture, every forgotten corner, like I was suddenly living in a spy movie. By 3:00 a.m., I had found 3 more hidden devices, one behind a vent in the hallway, one inside the lamp on her side of the closet, and one, most disturbingly, inside the frame of our wedding picture. Whoever did this knew everything. Every fight, every touch, every silence, every lie. And they weren't just watching, they were collecting. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch until sunrise, holding the devices in a shoebox like they were radioactive. And I kept refreshing my inbox, hoping for another message, hoping the ghost observing us would say more. At 6:22 a.m., they finally did. "You need to know who she really is and what she's preparing." Attached was a document, a PDF. I opened it. It was a scanned copy of a life insurance policy for me, signed 2 months ago. Beneficiary, Delilah. I don't remember breathing. The world around me became very still. The wind stopped. The trees didn't move. I sat frozen, reading the details like they were instructions to my own disappearance. The policy was huge. Enough money to begin a new life. Enough to relocate to a new country with a man you've been seeing behind your husband's back. I wanted to scream, to rage, to call her and demand answers, but the next page stopped me cold. It was a photo of her in the bedroom, talking on the phone. Captioned, "Recorded 5 days ago," transcription below. And then I read the line, "If it gets suspicious, I'll just make it appear like an accident." I've already informed Felix I'm not waiting much longer. I dropped my phone, not because I didn't believe it, but because deep down I did. I had believed it all along. Every time she walked behind me in silence, every time she double-checked the stove, every time I caught her watching me too long with no expression on her face. She didn't want to leave me. She wanted me gone. The worst part, I still cared about her. And that's how I knew I couldn't go to the police. Not yet. Because care makes you gullible, but betrayal makes you strategic. If she was playing a long game, so would I. I didn't go to work that day. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I sat in the garage with the door closed, phone in one hand, the box of miniature cameras in the other, and a brain spinning so fast I wasn't sure if I was planning an escape or just losing my mind. Every hour felt heavier than the last. By mid-afternoon, I received another email. This one had a name, Gideon L. Subject line: She did this before. There was a phone number. A single sentence followed. Call me before you end up like I did. For the first time in all of this, I hesitated. Really hesitated. Because this wasn't just about her infidelity anymore. This wasn't just about the way she scorned me in front of strangers or how she slowly erased me from our marriage. No, this was something far darker. If this man was real and what he said was true, then I had fallen in love with a woman who had done all of this before to someone else. I stared at the screen for 10 minutes before dialing. It rang once, then again, and then a tired, gravelly voice answered. Hudson? I swallowed hard. Yeah. Long pause, then a sigh. She's doing it again, isn't she? I didn't ask how he knew. Something about the way he spoke, like he'd been waiting years for this call. She told me her name was Clara back then, he said. We were living together in Ohio. She had a different hair color, but same smile, same way of talking like she was telling you a secret she'd never tell anyone else. You feel like you're the only one. Then, one day, you discover she's already moved on, and you're the last to know. My breath caught. I didn't interrupt. She recorded me, accessed my accounts, convinced me to sign things I didn't fully read. And when I started catching on, she tried to make it look like I was unstable, even filed a complaint with my job, saying I was harassing her. I lost everything before I even realized it was intentional. I leaned forward, holding the edge of the workbench. Did she try to? I couldn't say it. No, Gideon said, his voice hollow, but I wish she had. Would have been easier than watching her walk away with my house and my friends thinking I was the problem. It all started to click. Not just the infidelity, not just the manipulation, but the performance of it, how calculated she had been. The little games, the timing, the way she framed things like she was directing a play, and I was cast as the pathetic husband begging to be loved. Gideon continued, quieter now. She doesn't just leave people, Hudson. She ruins them slowly, intimately, until they lose so much they can't even explain it to anyone. I closed my eyes. It was like listening to someone read my future. She'll provoke you, he added, make you lose it, then claim she had no choice. That's her pattern. She won't come at you directly. She'll push you into the fire and scream for help. I sat in silence. You still with her? He asked. She thinks I am, I said, and then I heard myself say something I didn't expect, something terrifyingly calm. I'm going to let her finish the game, then I'll flip the board. Gideon was silent for a moment. Then he said, If you're serious, I can help, but you need to be 2 steps ahead, not 1, 2. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. We developed a plan. I won't spell it all out here, but it involved 3 things. A hidden recorder that I controlled, a visit to someone she didn't know I had spoken to, and her birthday. Her birthday was in 4 days. She had invited people over, including Felix, including his parents. I told her I'd planned a surprise. She smiled and said, Just don't embarrass yourself like last time. She still thought I was broken, still thought I'd cower in front of her smirking friends and beg for a place at her table. She had no idea because for once, I was the one watching her now, and what I was about to show the guests at her birthday party would make her regret ever underestimating me. The morning of her birthday, the house looked perfect. Too perfect. The kind of fake domestic happiness you see in catalogs. White candles lit just far enough from the floral centerpiece. Folded napkins with gold trim. Sparkling cider chilled because it looks classier in the glass, as she once said. She wore an emerald green dress, the one she bought without asking me last month, and told me, "It's not for you anyway." It hugged her like it was made to lie. She walked around this house with her usual effortless elegance, giving orders like she was managing staff instead of talking to her husband. "Keep your phone off the table. Don't make it awkward when Felix arrives. And please, Hudson, for once, just try not to look like you're mourning." I smiled and nodded. That's all I did these days. Smile, nod, pretend I didn't know she was planning to erase me from existence, pretend I hadn't seen the policy, the photos, the messages. She didn't know I'd recovered the hidden apps from her cloud. She thought I was the weak one, the pathetic man still writing love letters in my head. She had no idea I had been 10 steps ahead for 4 days straight. By noon, the doorbell rang. First came her friends, loud, over-perfumed women with sunglasses still on indoors, and voices that somehow always managed to talk over each other. Then came Felix, alone again. No explanation, just a smirk like he'd been waiting for this party to be his victory lap. He hugged her from behind, right in front of me. She didn't even flinch. I offered him a drink. My voice was even. Friendly. He said, "Wow, didn't expect that." And I smiled. "Oh, I've been full of surprises lately." At exactly 2:30, I pressed play on a playlist she made the week before. Some background lounge nonsense she always used to drown out awkward silence and let the conversation flow. I walked among the guests, poured drinks, answered questions, played the idiot, and I waited. Then it happened. She stood up to give a little speech. She always did on her birthday, some dramatic toast about personal development and gratitude and surrounding yourself with people who support your journey. But just as she raised her glass, I pulled out the remote from my back pocket and pressed a button. The music stopped. The TV turned on. She didn't notice at first. She was too caught up in her rehearsed self-praise, but the guests noticed. One by one, heads turned toward the massive flat screen on the wall behind her, and then the video started. There she was, in our bedroom, filmed from the hidden camera I had planted after removing the old one. Her voice was sharp, whispering into her phone. "No, he doesn't suspect anything. Honestly, it's becoming easier. He does my chores like I'm a queen. I could smack him, and he'd apologize." Gasps echoed across the room. Someone dropped a wine glass. A friend covered her mouth. Delilah turned slowly, her hand still in the air, mid-toast. And when she saw her own image on the screen, her expression cracked for the first time in weeks. I watched her pupils dilate. I watched her mask fall. The recording continued. "If the policy goes through, Felix. And I could be out of here by summer. You just need to keep quiet and let me manage this." She lunged for the remote in my hand. I stepped back. Felix looked like someone had punched him. "Wait, you said you canceled that plan. You said it was just talk." She turned to him in a panic. "It was, Felix, I swear." Another clip queued up. This time, her in the kitchen. This time she was saying, "You think I care about him? I stay because he's helpful. Once the accounts are drained, we're done." And then silence. No more gasps, just that kind of awful, loaded stillness where everyone's suddenly looking for exits or excuses. One of her friends grabbed her purse and ran out. Another muttered, "Wow," under her breath and followed. Felix turned to me, pale now. "You conned me." I nodded. I just let her keep talking. All I did was listen. She stared at me. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She was calculating. You could see it behind her eyes, her mind flipping pages, trying to find a lie that still fit this story. But I wasn't finished. I reached into my coat pocket and took out the folder Gideon had helped me assemble. Copies of the life insurance application, her forged digital signature, the photographs from Ohio, and statements from 2 people who knew Clara. I sent all of this to the legal department at my work and to your HR department, in case you forgot. Honey, your firm has an ethics clause. She opened her mouth and then closed it. No acting, no fake tears, just nothing. Just the recognition that everyone knew now. The lights were on. The audience had seen the strings. The illusion was over. But she still had one more move. That's what terrified me the most. She walked right past Felix without even glancing at him, didn't touch his arm, didn't whisper, just walked toward me slowly like she was strolling through her own party, like she hadn't just been exposed as a manipulative liar in front of a room full of people who once adored her. And then she said it quietly, almost playfully. So, this is who you are now. I met her gaze. No, this is who I've always been. You just didn't bother to look long enough. She tilted her head, that little condescending expression she always used when she thought she still had the advantage. But it didn't land this time. Not anymore. Not when her world had just collapsed under its own lies. One by one, the rest of the guests filtered out, some awkwardly, some with whispered apologies. Felix stood frozen, staring at her like he was finally seeing her for who she really was. She ignored them all and walked to the kitchen, poured herself another glass of wine, took one sip, and then, without a word, emptied the rest down the sink. I don't know why that moment stuck with me. Maybe because it was the first truthful thing I'd seen her do in months. She didn't argue. She didn't threaten. She didn't fight. She walked into the bedroom, packed a single suitcase, grabbed her phone and charger, and walked back toward the front door. I followed her there, not saying a word. When she opened it, she paused. You embarrassed me today, Hudson. I nodded. You tried to ruin me, Delilah. She looked at me for a moment longer. No smirk this time, just silence. Then she walked out, down the porch steps, and into a car I didn't recognize. She didn't look back, and just like that, she was gone. The house was quiet. Still, for the first time in years, it felt like it belonged to me again. No fragrance lingering in the hallway, no hidden stress under the dinner plates, just peace. That night, I didn't sleep on the couch. I didn't stare at the ceiling or relive every detail. I made myself tea, opened the windows, and sat at the kitchen table with a pen and paper. I started writing, not to her, but to myself, a list like before, but this time not of the things I missed, a list of what I learned. I let people convince me I was inferior. I let devotion become anxiety. I forgot who I was when no one was watching. But I'm still here, and I'm not shattered. 2 weeks later, I took time off work, flew out to meet Gideon in person. We had lunch and laughed harder than I thought possible. There was something healing about sharing silence with someone who understood exactly what you'd been through. And just a few days after that, I got a text from Elias. It simply read, "Proud of you, man. You're not transparent anymore." Today, my house is quiet, but not desolate. I renovated it, repainted the rooms, donated her things, rebuilt it brick by brick into something that didn't carry her fingerprints. And as I sit here writing this, I don't feel resentful. I feel cleansed. She walked away thinking she'd taken everything from me, but she left behind the one thing she never meant to give, my freedom. And I'm never giving it up.